The garage door slowly groaned open, letting in a rush of chilly Connecticut air that caused me to wrap my cardigan tighter around my shoulders. I felt around for the light switch flooding my bedroom, with light a foldable bed squeezed between stacks of boxes and rusty garden tools. This was what I got for giving my daughter everything I had built. The worst part. The lovely house I had constructed myself was only 50 feet away, warm lights shining from every window as I heard my son-in-law's laughter echoing in the night. I was Eleanor Wilson, 68 years old, and I was sleeping in my own garage while the man who swore to care for my daughter was hosting another dinner party without me. Before we continue, please let us know where you are watching from. And if this story connects with you, be sure to subscribe, because tomorrow I have something especially noteworthy planned for you. You are welcome to join us, Mom, Eliana had said earlier, avoiding my gaze. But Logan thinks it might be awkward because, well, you know how his co-workers are. What I knew was that Logan Reynolds felt I was not good enough for his carefully crafted image. What he did not realize was who I truly was or who I was about to contact. I never intended to live with my daughter and son-in-law. After David passed away 5 years ago, I was quite content in our family home, a large colonial in Maplewood, that my late husband and I had built ourselves back when Wilson Construction was just starting up. I designed every part of that house, from the fancy decorative molding to the hidden reading spot under the stairs. It was more than just a house. It was the physical result of 40 years of love and hard work. Eliana was our only child. Perhaps we spoiled her, especially David. Our daughter got whatever she wished for dance classes, private education trips to Europe. When she met Logan Reynolds during her final year of college, I had some doubts. There was something calculated about his charming manner, something too perfect about the way he spoke about the future. David, always the optimist, told me I was being too protective. "He comes from a good background, Ellie," David would say. "His father's company is respected. Eliana could do worse." I did not argue. What mother wants to admit she does not trust her daughter's judgment? Besides, Eliana looked radiant around Logan. He was handsome in a conventional way. Dark hair, always neatly styled, expensive-looking suits that showed he came from money, and a smile that never quite reached his eyes. But Eliana did not notice that last part. She saw the man who brought her flowers and promised her the world. When David was diagnosed with aggressive pancreatic cancer, everything changed. The man who had built homes for half the families in Maplewood declined before my eyes. During those final months, all he talked about was ensuring Eliana would be looked after. "Promise me you will take care of our girl." He whispered, his hand once strong, holding mine with surprising firmness. "Make sure she has everything she needs." I promised. How could I not? 3 months after the funeral, Logan proposed to Eliana. The wedding was grand, much more elaborate than David and I had ever imagined for our daughter. Logan's parents, Robert and Patricia Reynolds, made it clear from the start that they expected a certain standard. Patricia's remarks still play in my mind. "We should really host the reception at the country club," she said, looking at my home with barely hidden disapproval. "The Wilson house is charming, but not really suitable for the guest list." I said nothing. This was Eliana's special day, not mine. I wanted her to be happy. After their honeymoon, Logan began suggesting things about their living situation. The newlyweds were staying in a fancy apartment downtown, paid for by Logan's parents. "Eliana really misses Maplewood," he mentioned during Sunday dinner. "She talks about raising children in the house where she grew up. It would mean so much to her." I should have recognized it for what it was, manipulation. But grief had made me softer. All I could think about was David's final request. Make sure Eliana has everything she needs. So I did what any mother might do. I signed the ownership deed of our family home over to Eliana, with the understanding that I would live in the guest area we had built for my mother years before. The happiness on Eliana's face when I gave her the papers made it feel worthwhile. Or so I believed. The first few months were pleasant enough. I kept to myself, gave the young couple their privacy, and felt comfort in knowing Eliana was building her life in the home she had grown up in. I spent my days volunteering at the local community center and meeting my old friend Martha for coffee. Martha had cautioned me early on. "Ellie, you are being too generous," she said over warm mugs at the Green Street Cafe. "You should have kept some control over the property." I had just laughed it off. "Logan is a financial advisor, Martha. He knows how to manage assets better than I do. Besides, it is Eliana's inheritance. I am just giving it to her sooner." What I did not tell Martha or anyone was that the house was not my only valuable asset. David and I had built more than just a construction business. We had invested wisely for decades, putting money into real estate and other ventures. There was a cabin in Vermont that no one knew about, bought through one of our business entities. There were offshore accounts and secret partnerships with developers across the state. David had been the builder, but I had been the financial brains behind Wilson Construction. After his death, I had quietly sold the company for an amount that would have made Logan's eyes pop if he had known. But I kept these details private. "A smart woman always has a backup plan," David used to say with a wink. It was one of the many things we had agreed on during our 40-year marriage. The way things worked in the house changed gradually. At first, it was small matters. Logan rearranged the kitchen, moving my special occasion dishes to a high shelf I could not reach without a step stool. Then Eliana mentioned that perhaps I should not use the main entrance when they had visitors. "It is just that Logan's colleagues are important for his career advancement," she explained, not looking at me. "He needs to present a certain image." I wondered when I had become incompatible with my daughter's idea of success. I had managed a multi-million-dollar construction company for decades. I had negotiated contracts with some of the most powerful developers in the Northeast. Yet somehow I was not sophisticated enough for Logan's financial advisor friends. Then came the remodeling. Without asking me, Logan hired contractors to update the master suite, the bedroom. David and I had shared for decades. I returned home from a volunteer shift to find strangers tearing out the custom cabinets David had built himself. "We are modernizing the house to better fit their lifestyle," the project manager explained when I spoke to him, clearly uncomfortable. Mr. Reynolds was very specific about the changes. That night I found Eliana alone in the kitchen and asked her about the renovation. "Oh, Mom," she sighed. "Logan wanted to surprise me. Isn't it thoughtful? He says the house needs a modern touch. Eliana, those cabinets were handmade by your father. They were solid oak." She at least looked embarrassed. "I know, but Logan says they made the room look outdated. His clients expect a certain standard when they visit." "His clients visit your bedroom?" I could not keep the sharpness out of my voice. "It is not like that. We are having a housewarming party next month, and people will want a tour of the whole place. It needs to look unified." "Unified," I repeated. It was the first time I felt like a stranger in my own home. The renovations expanded. The reading nook David had built for Eliana when she was 7 gone. The hand-painted tiles in the guest bathroom replaced with cold modern marble. With each change, a part of David disappeared, and with it, a part of me. I started spending more time with Martha, who was understanding but increasingly worried. "Ellie, this is not right," she said one afternoon as we watched children playing in the park. "That is your home. You built it." "It is Eliana's home now," I replied, though the words felt bitter. "I gave it to her." Martha shook her head. "There is a difference between giving someone a gift and letting them erase you." I knew she was correct, but what could I do? I had signed away my legal rights to the property. Besides, confronting Logan directly would only make my relationship with Eliana worse. The final breaking point came 6 months after I had signed over the deed. I returned from visiting my sister for the weekend to find my belongings had been moved from the guest area to the separate garage at the back of the property. The garage had been quickly turned into a living space, a cot, a small heater, a small dresser, and a bathroom with a toilet and sink squeezed into the former tool area. Eliana met me in the driveway, her face showing a mix of guilt and stubbornness. "Logan's parents are coming to stay for a month," she explained. "They need the guest suite." "A month," I repeated, looking at the garage. "And you expect me to sleep out here?" "Eliana, it is November. Connecticut winters are not exactly garage-friendly." "It is insulated," she insisted, though we both knew it was not properly insulated for living. "And there is the space heater." "It is only for a short time, Mom." Where was I supposed to be during this family discussion? Eliana had the good sense to look away. "Logan thought it would be easier to present you with the solution rather than cause you stress about the planning." "How thoughtful of him," I said flatly. "Getting this story ready and telling it took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, please subscribe to our channel. It means a great deal to us. Now, back to the story. That night, lying on the creaky cot with the distant sounds of my daughter's life going on without me, I stared at the ceiling and finally faced the truth. Eliana was not going to defend me. Whatever hold Logan had over her was stronger than her connection to me. For the first time since David died, I felt truly alone. The temporary situation lasted weeks, then months. Robert and Patricia Reynolds extended their stay, then left only to be replaced by a series of house guests, Logan's colleagues, his college friends, even his personal fitness trainer who needed a place to stay between apartments. Each time Eliana assured me it would just be a little while longer. Winter arrived with harshness. The small heater struggled against the cold that seeped through the thin garage walls. I developed a constant cough that worried Martha enough that she insisted on taking me to her doctor. Long-term exposure to cold, possibly some mold in those garage walls. Dr. Chen diagnosed, giving me an inhaler and medicine. "Mrs. Wilson, this is not a suitable place to live for someone your age, especially in winter." Martha drove me back to the house, my house boiling with righteous anger. "This stops today," she declared, parking directly behind Logan's expensive car in the driveway. "I am going to give that arrogant young man a piece of my mind." I put a hand on her arm to stop her. "No, Martha. This is between me and my family." "What family?" she snapped. "A daughter who allows her mother to sleep in a garage. A son-in-law who treats you like an inconvenience. That is not family, Ellie. That is emotional mistreatment." The word mistreatment hung in the air. I had never thought of it that way. I was Eleanor Wilson, former head of Wilson Construction. I had negotiated million-dollar deals across conference tables. How had I allowed myself to be put in a garage by my own daughter? That evening, I knocked on the main house door, my own front door, and waited like a visitor until Eliana answered. "Mom, we are in the middle of dinner," she said, keeping the door only partly open. Through the gap, I could see Logan and another couple sitting at my dining room table, the cherrywood table David had custom-made for our 25th wedding anniversary. "I need to speak with you, both of you," I added, making sure Logan could hear me. Eliana looked back nervously. Can it wait? Logan is hosting his new clients. No, it cannot wait. I have been diagnosed with a lung infection from living in that cold garage. My doctor says I cannot stay there anymore. Logan appeared behind Eliana, his perfect smile fixed in place. Eleanor, we have guests. Surely this can wait until the morning. Eliana will bring you some extra blankets. I looked past him at the couple at the table who were watching with clear curiosity. Hello, I called out. I am Eleanor Wilson. This was my home before I gave it to my daughter. Now I sleep in the garage, while my son-in-law entertains in the house my husband built. How are you enjoying your dinner? The woman's eyes opened wide and she whispered something to her husband. Logan's smile wavered for the first time. Eleanor, that is enough, he whispered fiercely, moving to block my view. You are embarrassing, Eliana. I turned to my daughter, looking for any sign of the young woman who had once adored her father and me. Am I embarrassing you, Eliana? Or is it embarrassing that your mother has pneumonia from sleeping in a garage while you host dinner parties? Her face crumbled. For a moment, I thought I had broken through whatever hold Logan had on her. Then she straightened, her expression hardening in a way that reminded me painfully of Patricia Reynolds. You are being dramatic, Mom. It is not pneumonia, and the garage is perfectly fine. If you are unhappy with the arrangement, perhaps you should consider other options. The words hit me hard. My own daughter was suggesting I leave entirely. I see, I said quietly. I believe I will consider other options. I turned and walked back to the garage, my heart breaking with each step. Behind me, I heard Logan smoothly talking to his guests, his voice carrying across the yard. My mother-in-law is going through a difficult adjustment period. You know how it is with older people. They struggle with change. I was 68, hardly elderly. I had managed a company until 3 years ago. I had raised money-managed teams and built a legacy that had provided the very roof over Logan's ungrateful head. Inside the garage, I sat on the edge of the cot and made a decision. I had tried to honor David's wish by giving Eliana everything, but my late husband would never have wanted this. His wife sent away to a garage, his memory erased from the home he built. His daughter turned into someone who could treat her mother with such casual cruelty. I picked up my phone and scrolled to a contact I had not called in years. George Thompson had been David's business partner and my friend for decades. He had retired to Florida shortly after David's death, but we still exchanged holiday cards. More importantly, George was the only other person who knew about all of Wilson Construction's assets, including the ones that were not in the official records. My finger paused over his name. If I made this call, there would be no going back. The quiet, obedient mother who accepted whatever scraps of dignity her daughter and son-in-law offered her would be gone forever. Outside, I could hear laughter from the house as Logan entertained his guests, probably pouring wine into the crystal glasses David and I had received as wedding presents. My eyes drifted to the photo on my makeshift bedside table, David holding baby Eliana, his face filled with pride and love. I tried Tom, I whispered to his picture, but I think it is time for Plan B. I pressed the call button. It rang 3 times before a familiar voice answered. Eleanor Wilson. It has been too long. How are you, my dear? I took a deep breath. George, I need your help. It is time to start the emergency plan. There was a pause, then a quiet laugh. I was wondering when you would call. David always said you would wait too long. What did that son-in-law of yours do? As I explained the situation, I felt a weight lifting off me. By the time I hung up, the path ahead was clear. Eleanor Wilson was done sleeping in garages. It was time to remind everyone exactly who I was and what happens to people who underestimate me. George arrived in Maplewood 3 days later. I met him at the Green Street Cafe, away from Eliana and Logan's watchful eyes. Despite being in his 70s, George Thompson had not changed much, still tall and impressive, with bright white hair and those sharp blue eyes that could see through any dishonesty. He hugged me warmly before holding me at arm's length, his face clouding over as he took in my appearance. "Good heavens, Eleanor," he muttered. "You have lost 20 pounds since I last saw you, and that cough does not sound good." I brushed aside his concern as we sat down in a corner booth. "Living in a garage is not exactly a spa treatment, George, but I will be fine. You should not have been living in a garage in the first place," he replied, his voice tight with controlled anger. "David would be turning in his grave if he knew." The waitress brought us coffee, and I wrapped my hands around the warm mug, enjoying the heat. The cafe was quiet at this time, just a few retired people reading newspapers, and a young mother trying to keep her toddler busy. "I have the documents you asked for," George said, sliding a thick envelope across the table. "Everything is in order. Property deeds, bank statements, the formation papers for Horizon Holdings." Horizon Holdings had been David's and my secret backup plan. We had created the company years ago, gradually transferring properties and investments into its name. On paper, Horizon was owned by a series of shell companies that eventually led back to a trust we had established. Neither Eliana nor Logan had any idea it existed. "What about the cabin?" I asked. George smiled. "Still there, still beautiful, and legally owned by Horizon Holdings. I had a property manager check on it last month. Everything is ready for you whenever you want to use it." I took a deep breath, feeling something like hope for the first time in months. "And the liquid assets?" "About $4.2 million accounts that only you can access. David made sure of that." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Ellie, why did you wait so long to call me? You have been living like you had no money when you are worth millions." The question caught in my throat. Why had I put myself through this pride-stubbornness love for my daughter? "I wanted to give Eliana a chance," I finally admitted. "I thought if I was patient enough, understanding enough, she would remember who she was, who we were as a family. I did not want to believe she would choose Logan over me." George's weathered hand covered mine. "Your daughter made her decision, Ellie. Now it is time to make yours." We spent the next 2 hours reviewing my options. The ownership of the house was in Eliana's name. There was no changing that. But everything else, all the assets Logan had no idea existed, those were still mine to control. "The first thing we need to do," George said, "is get you out of that garage. You are coming back to my hotel with me today, and tomorrow we will find you a proper place to live." I shook my head. "Not yet. If I leave now, Logan wins. He wants me gone out of sight where he does not have to acknowledge I exist. I need to be smart about this." George raised an eyebrow. "You have something in mind." "I do." I took a sip of coffee, arranging my thoughts. Logan's whole image is built on the appearance of success. His family has old money, but from what I have gathered, Robert Reynolds' company has been having problems for years. Logan needs to maintain the look of wealth and influence to attract clients. And you want to disrupt that appearance. "Exactly, but first I need information." I took out my phone and scrolled to a name. "I have been doing some research. Logan's firm, Reynolds Financial Services, is not as stable as he pretends. They have lost several major clients recently. I need to know why." "You suspect something dishonest?" "I suspect Logan inherited his father's tendency to cut corners. David always said Robert Reynolds would charm you with one hand while taking your money with the other." George leaned back, a slow smile spreading across his face. "You have not changed a bit, Ellie. Still the strategist." "I learned from the best." I replied, thinking of David and our late-night planning sessions at the kitchen table, figuring out the future of Wilson Construction deal by deal. We parted ways with a plan in place. George would stay in Maplewood for a week, using his old business contacts to quietly investigate Reynolds Financial Services. Meanwhile, I would continue living in the garage, playing the role of the defeated mother-in-law, while gathering information from inside the house. That evening, I returned to find Logan's car gone, and Eliana alone in the kitchen. She looked up as I came in, her face guarded. "Mom, about last night." "It is all right," I interrupted, keeping my voice gentle. "I understand you were in a difficult position." Relief washed over her face, quickly followed by guilt. "The garage really is not suitable. I have been talking to Logan about converting the basement space into an apartment for you. It would be warmer at least." "That is thoughtful." I coughed deliberately, reminding her of my condition. "Though Dr. Chen did say I need to avoid damp places because of my lungs." Eliana bit her lip. "The basement is dry. Dad made sure of that when he built the house." Her voice softened when she mentioned David. "Remember how he insisted on that French drainage system everyone thought was too much?" "I remember." I sat at the kitchen island watching my daughter move around the space David and I had designed together. "Your father was always thinking ahead, planning for every possibility. He was amazing that way." A genuine smile appeared on her face, and for a moment I saw my Eliana again, not the woman Logan had shaped her into. "Have you heard from Logan's parents lately?" I asked, keeping my tone casual. Eliana became slightly tense. "They are in Palm Beach for the winter." "Why?" "Just curious. Robert mentioned some changes at the firm when they were staying here. I wondered how that was going." "What changes?" Her voice became sharper. I shrugged. "Something about restructuring. I am sure it is nothing important." Eliana turned away, busy wiping down the counter. "Logan does not really talk about business with me." "Interesting." In all our family dinners before the wedding, Logan had boasted about how he included Eliana in every part of his life, including his financial work. "Partners in everything," he had declared, raising a toast. Apparently that partnership had limits. "Of course," I said. "It was probably just small talk." I stood, making it seem like I needed to steady myself against the counter. "I should get back to the garage. I am feeling a bit tired." Eliana's eyes showed worry. "Mom, are you okay? You look pale." "Just the infection. Dr. Chen says it will take time to get better." "Maybe we should look into assisted living options," she suggested cautiously. "Somewhere with proper medical supervision." I almost laughed. Assisted living at 68 with my mind sharp and my bank accounts healthy. But I kept my face neutral. "Perhaps, though, those places are expensive. Logan knows someone who runs a very nice facility in Glastonbury. Nothing too fancy, but clean and well managed. In other words, inexpensive." I nodded thoughtfully. "I will consider it, though I am not sure what I would use for payment. The house was my main asset, and my Social Security barely covers my medicines." It was a clear lie. David and I had excellent insurance and substantial savings apart from the house, but Eliana did not need to know that. Not yet. "We could help," she offered, though her tone lacked conviction. "Logan and I..." "That is very kind, but you two are just starting out. I would not want to be a burden." I headed toward the door, then paused. "Eliana, are you happy?" The question caught her off guard. Of course I am. Why would you ask that? You just seem different lately. Less like yourself and more like... Like what? Her defenses were rising. Like Patricia, I said simply. Color drained from her face. If there was one person Eliana had always sworn she would never be like, it was her mother-in-law. Patricia Reynolds' cold perfectionism and focus on material things had been sources of many eye rolls and complaints during Eliana's engagement. "That is ridiculous," she said. "I am nothing like her." "I hope not." I opened the door. Because Patricia would send her mother off to a cheap nursing home without a second thought. I have always believed you had more of your father in you than that. I left her standing in the kitchen, her mouth slightly open. It was a calculated risk pushing her that way, but I needed to plant seeds of doubt. The Eliana I had raised was still in there somewhere, beneath layers of Logan's influence. Back in the garage, I looked over the documents George had brought. The cabin in Vermont was ready whenever I needed it. A lovely 3-bedroom property on 5 acres bought through Horizon Holdings 10 years ago, when David and I were planning our retirement. We had kept it secret from the family, our private escape. There were also statements from accounts in 3 different banks, all healthy and untouched since David's death. The papers for Horizon showed that I was the sole managing member with full authority to act on the company's behalf. Most interesting was a folder labeled Reynolds Financial Initial. George had already begun his investigation, pulling public records and news stories about Robert Reynolds' firm. Nothing clearly criminal yet, but there were patterns, complaints, suddenly withdrawn settlements, with secrecy agreements, former employees who refused to provide references. My phone vibrated with a text from George. "Dinner tomorrow. Found something interesting." I replied with a simple yes, then settled onto my cot, my mind full of possibilities. For the first time since David died, I felt the familiar rush of energy that came with solving a difficult problem. Logan Reynolds had no idea what was coming. The next evening, I told Eliana I was having dinner with Martha, then met George at an upscale restaurant in the next town over. He was already seated when I arrived, having a scotch and looking pleased. "You are going to enjoy this," he said as I sat down. I made contact with a former employee of Reynolds Financial, a junior advisor named Olivia Chen. She left the firm about 8 months ago under unclear circumstances, and she was willing to talk. Not at first, but when I mentioned I was representing a potential investor concerned about ethics, she agreed to meet. George slid his phone across the table, showing a photo of a professional-looking Asian woman in her mid-40s. "She is smart, Ellie. Top of her class at Wharton. Perfect credentials." Reynolds recruited her heavily, then pushed her aside when she started asking questions. Questions about what? Client accounts, specifically differences in reported returns versus actual performance. She suspected someone was manipulating the numbers to keep clients happy, while secretly taking money from the accounts. My blood ran cold. Potentially securities fraud. She could not prove anything. Reynolds keeps their systems very secure, but she saw enough to make her feel uncomfortable. When she raised concerns with Robert, he ignored her. When she went to Logan, he had her fired the next day. Did she report it? She filed a complaint with the Securities and Exchange Commission, but without strong evidence, they could not pursue it. She has been blacklisted from most firms in the area. Reynolds made sure of that. She is working as a financial consultant for small businesses, now barely making enough to live. I took in this information. Would she be willing to meet with me? She is cautious, but yes. I told her you might have resources that could help her case. She is meeting us for coffee tomorrow. We ordered dinner, and I told George about my conversation with Eliana. He nodded approvingly. You are creating distance between her and Logan. Good strategy. I am trying to remind her of who she was before him, I corrected. My daughter was never cruel or focused on material things. This version of Eliana is Logan's creation. Or perhaps it is who she always was, and you just did not want to see it. George's voice was gentle, but his words hurt. You did not know her growing up. She was kind, George, thoughtful. David and I raised her to value people over possessions. People change, Ellie, sometimes for the worse. I pushed my food around on my plate, no longer hungry. Not Eliana. Not completely. I refused to believe that. George did not argue, but his silence said a lot. We moved on to practical matters, finding me a place to live, accessing the funds I would need to carry out my plan, establishing a timeline for action. The most important thing, he emphasized, is keeping the element of surprise. The moment Logan realizes you have resources he does not know about, he will start fighting back. He will not find out until I am ready, I assured him. Right now, he sees me as a helpless old woman he can pressure into leaving. That perception is my biggest advantage. After dinner, George drove me back to the house, stopping a block away at my request. Are you sure you do not want to come to the hotel? I have a suite with an extra bedroom. You would be comfortable there. Not yet, I said. I need to be here a little longer. Trust me, George. He sighed. I do trust you. It is that son-in-law of yours I am worried about. Men like Logan are dangerous when trapped. I will be careful. I promised, then made my way back to the garage in the darkness. The next morning I found a note taped to the garage door in Eliana's handwriting. Mom going to look at that facility in Glastonbury with Logan. Back by dinner. There is soup in the fridge if you are hungry. Jay. So they were already looking at nursing homes, moving faster than I had expected. I needed to speed up my own plans. I spent the morning on my laptop researching Connecticut's financial rules and documentation requirements for investment advisors. By noon, I understood where Reynolds Financial might be vulnerable if they were indeed manipulating client accounts. At 1:00, I met George and Olivia Chen at a quiet cafe in Hartford. Olivia was exactly as her photo suggested, polished professional, with an intensity in her dark eyes that showed determination. Mrs. Wilson, she greeted me. George explained your situation. I am sorry about your daughter and son-in-law. Please call me Eleanor, and I appreciate your willingness to meet with us. We sat down in a booth at the back of the cafe, and Olivia got straight to the point. I need to be clear, I have suspicions, but no definite proof of wrongdoing at Reynolds Financial. Everything I saw could potentially be explained as errors in administration or aggressive but legal investment strategies. But you do not believe that is the case, I prompted. No, I do not. The patterns were two consistent large accounts showing falsely high returns on paper, while the actual investments did not match the reports clients being moved between advisors whenever they started asking detailed questions. And there was a separate protected client list that only Robert and Logan could access. George leaned forward. Important clients. Olivia nodded. That is what they called them. But these were not necessarily the wealthiest clients or the oldest accounts. Some were relatively new with small portfolios. The common factor seemed to be that they rarely checked their statements closely. Older clients. I suggested people who trusted their advisor completely. Exactly. Many were retired people who had given their life savings to Reynolds. Several were widows. Her eyes met mine. Women who had recently lost their husbands and had limited financial experience. My stomach tightened. It was a pattern of targeting vulnerable people. If Logan had seen me as a potential target before learning I had signed the house over to Eliana, the thought made me sick. What exactly are you hoping to find, Eleanor? Olivia asked. Leverage, I answered honestly. My son-in-law is trying to force me out of my daughter's life. If he is involved in financial misconduct, I want to know about it. To report him if necessary. My preference would be to convince him to stop without involving the authorities. I do not want to see my daughter hurt by a public scandal. Olivia thought about this. I understand your position, but these are not just numbers on a page. These are real people's life savings. If Reynolds Financial is cheating clients, they deserve to be stopped. And they will be. I assured her one way or another. But I need evidence first. Could you identify which clients might have been victims? She hesitated. I do not have access to their systems anymore. And even when I worked there, the VIP list was restricted. But you remember some names. A few. There was one woman I was especially worried about, Margaret Winters. She invested her entire inheritance with Reynolds about 2 years ago, roughly $1.2 million. Her statements every 3 months showed consistent 8 to 10% returns, which is unusually high for the conservative portfolio she requested. But when I accidentally accessed her actual holdings during a system problem, the numbers did not match up. I took out a notebook and wrote down the name. Anyone else? Olivia gave me 3 more names along with what she could recall about their accounts. It was not much, but it was a beginning. There is something else, she added. There was an internal audit scheduled about a month before I left. Standard procedure, usually routine, but Logan and Robert were unusually nervous. They had us working late for weeks, cleaning up the files, as they called it. After hours, when they thought everyone had gone home, I saw them in Robert's office with piles of documents. They were destroying things. George and I exchanged glances. Destroying documents before an audit was a major warning sign. Do you know which firm conducted the audit? I asked. Peyton Associates. They have been Reynolds' auditors for years. I always thought it was strange. Most firms change auditors regularly to ensure impartiality. Another note from my book. Olivia, would you be willing to formally state this information if it became necessary? She took a deep breath. If you find actual evidence of cheating, yes, but not based on suspicions alone. I have already been blacklisted in this industry. I cannot afford to be called a whistleblower without proof. Fair enough. I agreed. For now, let us keep this conversation between us, but I may need to contact you again as this progresses. After Olivia left George, and I remained at the table processing what we had learned. It is not direct proof, he acknowledged, but it is convincing. If Logan and his father are running a scheme or secretly taking money from accounts, they have put themselves in a dangerous situation. And they have hurt people in the process. I added thinking of Margaret Winters and the other names on my list. I need to see those client files. Breaking into Reynolds Financial is not an option, Ellie. No, but approaching these clients might be. If they are willing to share their statements and account details, we might spot the differences Olivia mentioned. It is risky. If Logan finds out you are questioning his clients. He will not. I checked my watch. I should get back before Eliana and Logan return from their nursing home visit. George insisted on driving me, still uncomfortable with my garage living arrangements. As we drove up a block from the house, he handed me a key card. Room 412 at the Maplewood Inn. It is reserved in my name for the next month. Use it whenever you need a break from that garage. I slipped the card into my pocket. Thank you, George, for everything. David would be proud of you, Ellie. Standing your ground, protecting what is important. I smiled, though tears came to my eyes. What is important is making things right, Not just for me, but for Eliana too. She deserves better than a husband who takes advantage of vulnerable people. And if she does not see it that way, if she chooses him despite knowing the truth, it was the question I had been avoiding. Then at least I will have tried. I owe David that much. I walked back to the garage, my mind racing with plans. If Logan Reynolds was involved in financial cheating, I needed proof not just to protect myself, but to save my daughter from a man who would risk her future for his own gain. And perhaps in the process, I might be able to help Margaret Winters and others like her get back what was rightfully theirs. As I approached the property, I noticed Logan's car was already in the driveway. They had returned earlier than expected. Through the kitchen window, I could see Eliana and Logan in what looked like a heated discussion. Eliana's arms were folded defensively, while Logan stood over her, his face tight with anger. I could not hear their words, but their body language was clear. He was pushing for something, and she was resisting. I slowed my pace, watching. Whatever they were arguing about, it was serious. Eliana shook her head strongly, then turned away. Logan grabbed her arm, spinning her back to face him. Even from this distance, I could see the sudden fear on my daughter's face. My blood ran cold. In that moment, everything made sense. Eliana's increasing isolation, her slight flinches, when Logan moved too quickly, the careful way she watched his moods. This was not just about control or money. My daughter was afraid of her husband. I had been approaching this as a battle of wits, a strategic game to outsmart Logan. But now I understood the risks were much higher than I had realized. This was not just about getting back my dignity or exposing financial misconduct. It was about saving my daughter from a man who might be dangerous. I retreated to the shadows of the garden shed, taking out my phone to text George. Need to move faster. Eliana may be in danger. His reply came seconds later. Coming back. Be there in 20. Do not confront him. I put the phone away, my heart pounding. 20 minutes felt like forever with my daughter inside that house. Through the window, I could see Logan gesturing angrily, his face twisted. Eliana had backed against the counter, making herself smaller. I had no proof he had ever physically harmed her, but emotional abuse was often the first sign of violence. I could not wait for George. I needed to interrupt whatever was happening in that kitchen. Taking a deep breath, I straightened my shoulders and walked purposefully toward the back door. Eleanor Wilson had spent enough time hiding in garages. It was time to step back into the light and into the fight for my daughter's future. I knocked sharply on the back door, not waiting for permission, before turning the handle. The argument inside stopped suddenly as I stepped into the kitchen. Logan's expression changed instantly, the rage disappearing into his practiced charm with disturbing ease. "Eleanor," he said smoothly. "We were just discussing the Glastonbury facility. It is really quite nice, private rooms, daily activities, medical staff available. I think you would be comfortable there." Eliana quickly wiped her eyes, forcing a smile that did not reach them. "Mom, I thought you were out with Martha today." "Plans changed," I replied, looking directly at Logan. "Is everything all right?" I could hear loud voices from the driveway. "Just a small disagreement about finances," Logan said dismissively. "Nothing for you to worry about." Really, because it looked rather intense from where I was standing. Logan's smile became tighter. "Were you spying on us, Eleanor?" "Observing," I corrected. "There is a difference. Just as there is a difference between a disagreement and whatever I just saw." Eliana stepped between us, her hands moving nervously. "It is nothing, Mom, really. Logan is just stressed about work. The audit is coming up." "An audit?" Logan's voice held a warning towards Eliana. Your mother does not need to hear about our business matters. An audit just like Olivia had mentioned. The timing could not be a coincidence. Actually, I said, moving to the refrigerator as if I were simply looking for something to eat. I would be happy to help if you are preparing for an audit. I managed Wilson Construction's books for 30 years. Numbers are something I am good at. Logan laughed, the sound empty and condescending. That is very kind, Eleanor, but Reynolds Financial is much more complex than a local construction company. We have certified accountants for that sort of thing. I took out the container of soup Eliana had mentioned, in her note keeping my face neutral, despite the insult. Of course, just offering. Though David and I did manage a multi-million-dollar business with operations in 3 states. Not quite as simple as you might think. Eliana glanced at Logan, a hint of defiance in her eyes. Dad's company was very successful, Logan. They built half the commercial properties in the county, and yet they sold it off rather than growing. He replied, perhaps a lack of vision. If only he knew. David and I had sold the company when it was doing best, anticipating the construction slowdown that happened 6 months later. Our timing had been perfect, maximizing our profit, while our competitors struggled. But Logan did not need to know that. Different priorities, I said gently. David valued family more than building a business empire. Logan checked his watch with clear impatience. Speaking of priorities, I have calls to make. Eliana, we will continue our discussion later. The threat was subtle but clear. Eliana's shoulders tensed as Logan left the room. When the door to his home office closed, she breathed out shakily. Mom, you should not anger him. He is under a lot of pressure right now. I heated the soup in the microwave, choosing my words carefully. What kind of pressure exactly? Eliana busy wiping down the already clean counter. Just work stuff. The markets have been unstable. Clients are worried. You know how it is. Is that why you were arguing about client concerns? Her hand stopped moving. Not exactly. Then what exactly? She looked towards Logan's office, lowering her voice. He wants to use the house as security for a business loan. I told him I was not comfortable with that. The house, my house, the home David had built himself that I had signed over to Eliana, with the understanding it would be her security, her legacy. Now Logan wanted to risk it on whatever financial problem he was trying to fix. Why does he need a loan? I asked, keeping my voice steady despite the anger rising inside me. It is a short-term cash flow issue. He says it is normal in the financial industry. Sometimes you need money to cover client withdrawals while waiting for other investments to pay out. She hesitated. But it is a lot of money, Mom. And the house would be the only security. Red flags were waving wildly in my mind. This was not normal industry practice. It was classic behavior for a fraudulent scheme, using new money to pay existing investors while trying to maintain the appearance of legitimacy. How much money are we talking about? Eliana bit her lip. $2 million. I nearly dropped my soup bowl. $2 million. Eliana, that is not a cash flow issue. That is a disaster. What happens if the loan is not repaid? You would lose the house. Logan says it is perfectly safe. The investments will pay out next quarter and everything will balance out. It is just temporary. I put down my spoon, choosing my next words with extreme care. Have you seen papers showing these investments? Confirmation that they actually exist and will pay out as he claims? Of course they exist, she said sharply, becoming defensive. Logan would not lie about something like that. I am not suggesting he would. I lied. But it is a significant risk. Before you put your home on the line, you should at least check the details. It is just being careful. Eliana's face showed uncertainty and loyalty to her husband. Logan handles all the financial matters. He knows what he is doing. Then he should have no problem showing you the papers," I pointed out. "Just ask him for the specifics, which investments are paying out when exactly, and for how much. If everything is legitimate, he will have that information easily available." The kitchen door opened and Logan reappeared, his smile tight as he saw the scene. "Everything okay in here?" Eliana straightened, her moment of doubt hidden. "Fine. Mom was just having some soup." "Wonderful." Logan's eyes flicked to me, then back to Eliana. "I have just spoken with the director at Whispering Pines. They have an opening next week for your mother. Small room, but private bath and within our budget." "My budget?" He meant the made-up budget of a supposedly poor widow. "That seems very rushed," I commented. "I have not even visited the facility." "They will arrange a visit tomorrow, but spaces fill quickly, so we would need to put down a deposit to hold it." He turned to Eliana. "I told her we would bring a check by in the morning." Eliana looked uncertain. "Should we not discuss this with Mom first? Maybe look at a few more options." Logan's smile did not disappear, but something cold showed in his eyes. "We have already looked at 3 facilities, darling. And given your mother's health concerns, the garage simply is not suitable. Unless you would prefer she move into the guest suite again." The question was loaded with implication. Eliana glanced at me apologetically. "The deposit makes sense. We can always get it back if you do not like the place, right?" "Of course," Logan assured her, though I doubted the truth of that statement. I stood gathering my dignity. "I appreciate your concern for my well-being, Logan, but I am not ready to make that decision yet. I would like to explore all my options." His expression hardened. "Options require resources, Eleanor. Resources you do not have. Eliana and I are trying to be generous here, but our patience and money have limits." Before I could answer, the doorbell rang. Logan frowned, checking his watch again. "Are we expecting someone?" "I will get it," Eliana said quickly, seeming relieved by the interruption. A moment later, George's loud voice carried from the entrance area. "There she is, Eliana, my dear. You are looking more like your mother every day." I hid a smile. George had arrived right on time. By the time he entered the kitchen, he was fully acting the part the friendly old family friend, unaware of tension or hidden meanings. "Eleanor," he exclaimed, hugging me. "When you mentioned you were staying with Eliana, I had to stop by. It has been, 4 years? And Logan." He extended his hand, gripping Logan's firmly. "Good to see you again, son. Still keeping the financial world going." Logan's confusion was clear. He clearly did not remember meeting George at the funeral, where he had been just another face in the crowd of mourners. "Mr. Thompson. George Thompson, David's old partner. We met at the service, though it was a difficult day for everyone." George patted his shoulder. "I hope you do not mind the intrusion. I am in town for a few days on business and wanted to check in on Eleanor." Logan's discomfort was growing rapidly. "Not at all. Though we were in the middle of a family discussion. About my living arrangements," I added. "Logan and Eliana think I should move to an assisted living facility." George's eyebrows went up. "Assisted living? At your age, Eleanor, you are more lively than half the 60-year-olds I know." "Mom has been sick," Eliana explained. "The garage is not properly insulated, and with winter coming." "The garage—" George interrupted, his act slipping momentarily as real outrage showed. "You are living in the garage, Eleanor." I nodded. "It is a temporary arrangement." "That will not do at all." George turned to Logan, his voice becoming slightly harder. Surely a man of your means can find better lodging for your mother-in-law than a garage. David Wilson would be shocked. Logan stiffened at the implied criticism. We have offered alternatives. Eleanor has been unwilling. Unwilling to be sent off to a nursing home, perhaps, George replied. But surely there are other options. What about renting her an apartment nearby or converting part of this enormous house into a private space for her? We have considered those options, Logan said rigidly. They are not financially possible right now. George looked around the expensively renovated kitchen with clear meaning. Really, forgive me, but you seem to be doing quite well for yourselves. Custom cabinets, high-end appliances. David would be impressed by the improvements. I watched Logan's face grow darker. George was intentionally provoking him, pushing buttons to see how he would react under pressure. So far, the results were telling. Our financial situation is private, Logan said coldly, and frankly, none of your business. George raised his hands in a gesture of apology. You are absolutely right. Forgive an old man's rudeness. I am just concerned about Eleanor. David and I were partners for 30 years. She is like family to me. Eliana, always trying to keep the peace, spoke up. We are concerned about her too, Mr. Thompson. That is why we are looking at assisted living options. Mom needs proper care, especially with her health issues. George turned to me, his concern seeming genuine. Health issues? Eleanor, you did not mention anything serious in your Christmas card. Respiratory infection, I explained. From the garage conditions. George's face darkened. I see. He seemed to make a decision, taking out his wallet and pulling out a business card. Well, I am staying at the Maplewood Inn for the next few days. Eleanor, why do you not join me for dinner tomorrow? We can catch up properly. He handed me the card, then turned to Logan and Eliana. You are both welcome too, of course. Logan opened his mouth, likely to refuse, but Eliana spoke first. That would be lovely, Mr. Thompson. What time? 7 o'clock. The hotel restaurant is quite good. Perfect. Eliana smiled, though it did not reach her eyes. We will be there. After George left, Logan turned on Eliana. Why did you accept that invitation? We have the charity gala tomorrow night. That is not until 9 Wurazur, Eliana countered. We can do both. Besides, Mr. Thompson is Dad's old friend. It would be rude to refuse. Logan's jaw tightened, but he did not argue further. Instead, he turned to me. Your friend seems quite worried about your welfare, Eleanor. Perhaps he would like to contribute to your care expenses, since he finds our solution so inadequate. The suggestion was both insulting and revealing. Logan saw relationships purely in terms of transactions. If George cared, he should pay. The idea of emotional support without financial obligations seemed foreign to him. George is being polite, I said. He has his own family to worry about. Logan scoffed. Convenient. Everyone has opinions about how we should handle things, but no one offers actual help. I do not need help, I replied evenly. I need respect. My name is on the ownership papers for the garage you have put me in. I built this house with David. I have a right to be treated with dignity in it. Your name was on the ownership papers, Logan corrected. You signed it over, remember. Legally, this property belongs to Eliana now. Logan, stop. Eliana said quietly. Mom knows what she signed. Does she? Logan challenged. Because she seems to have forgotten that her generous act came with practical limits. We cannot afford to keep up this house and pay for a separate apartment for her. The assisted living facility is the sensible compromise. I put down my soup bowl, no longer hungry. I think I will return to my garage accommodations now. Thank you for the soup, Eliana. Mom, Eliana began, but Logan cut her off. Let her go. She needs time to consider the Whispering Pines option calmly. I walked out with my head held high, refusing to give Logan the satisfaction of seeing me upset. Back in the garage, I texted George, "Thank you for the interruption. Things are worse than I thought." His reply came immediately. "Agreed. That man is dishonest. Dinner tomorrow is set. I have also contacted Margaret Winters. She has agreed to meet us the day after. Progress. If Margaret could provide her account statements, we might have the evidence we needed to prove Logan's financial wrongdoings. But first, I needed to survive another night in the garage and prepare for tomorrow's dinner, a dinner that could change everything." The next morning, I woke to the sound of raised voices again. Through the garage window, I could see Logan and Eliana on the back patio having another heated discussion. Logan was gesturing strongly, while Eliana shook her head. I could not hear their words, but their body language was clear. He was pushing for something, and she was resisting. I waited until Logan's car left the driveway before making my way to the house. Eliana was sitting at the kitchen table staring into a cup of coffee, her face troubled. "Everything all right?" I asked, pouring myself a cup. She was startled, as if she had not heard me come in. "Fine, just talks about finances." "The house loan again?" Eliana nodded. "Logan says we need to move quickly. The bank needs paperwork by the end of the week. And you are still not comfortable with it." She looked up, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "I do not know what to do, Mom. Logan says it is essential for the business, but it is Dad's house. Using it as security feels wrong." I sat beside her, choosing my words carefully. "Your father built this house to be your security, Eliana, not something to be risked in a business deal. I know, but Logan says if we do not get this loan, some of their clients could lose significant amounts of their investments. He talks about our responsibility to them. Responsibility to clients, a convenient moral excuse that ignored the recklessness that had created the situation. Classic manipulation. If the firm is in that kind of trouble," I suggested gently, "perhaps it is time to bring in outside help. Financial regulators even. They can sometimes arrange protection for clients while changes are made." Eliana turned pale. "Logan would never agree to that. He says any hint of instability would cause clients to leave the firm immediately. Everyone would withdraw at once and they could not cover it." Another warning sign. If Reynolds Financial could not handle normal client withdrawals, they were already in serious financial trouble. "Eliana," I said, taking her hand, "I need to ask you something important, and I need you to be honest with me. Has Logan ever hurt you? Physically, I mean." Her reaction was immediate, a flash of panic quickly controlled. "No. Why would you ask that?" "Because I have seen how tense you get when he is angry, the way you watch his movements anticipate his moods. It is not healthy, Jess. He is under a lot of stress." The defense was automatic, rehearsed. Sometimes he raises his voice, but he would not do that. I squeezed her hand. "If that ever changes, if you ever feel unsafe, you will tell me right. Promise me." She nodded, though her eyes avoided mine. "I promise. But it is not like that, Mom. Really." I wanted to believe her, but the tight feeling in my stomach worsened. Whatever was happening at Reynolds Financial had Logan on edge, and Eliana was suffering because of his anxiety. The dinner with George tonight could not come soon enough. I spent the day getting ready, using George's hotel room to shower and change into clothes more suitable for an upscale restaurant. The black pantsuit I chose showed authority and confidence, a stark contrast to the defeated widow Logan believed me to be. I styled my silver hair, carefully applied subtle makeup, and put on the pearl earrings David had given me for our 30th anniversary. George whistled approvingly when I came out of the bathroom. There is the Eleanor Wilson I remember. Logan will not know what happened to him. That is the idea, I replied, checking my appearance one last time. Did you bring the documents? He patted his briefcase. Everything we need right here. Are you sure you want to do this in a public place? Absolutely. Logan is too concerned with how things look to cause a scene in the hotel restaurant, and having witnesses might work in our favor. We arrived at the restaurant early, getting a corner table with a good view of the entrance. I felt a strange calm settle over me as we waited. After months of being on the defensive of being ignored and dismissed, I was finally taking control of the situation. Eliana and Logan arrived precisely at 7. I watched their approach carefully, noticing the tension in Eliana's posture and the possessive way Logan guided her with a hand at her back. They were dressed formally. Eliana in a navy cocktail dress I had never seen before, Logan in a tailored suit that showed expensive taste. Logan saw us first, his steps faltering briefly, as he took in my changed appearance. The surprise in his eyes was deeply satisfying. Eleanor, he managed, regaining his composure. You look different. A proper shower makes a big difference, I replied gently, standing up to hug Eliana. You look beautiful, sweetheart. Eliana hugged me tightly, whispering, You look amazing, Mom. George stood shaking Logan's hand with practiced friendliness. Logan, good to see you again. Please have a seat. I have taken the liberty of ordering a bottle of Bordeaux, David's favorite. We sat around the table, Logan clearly unsettled by the change in atmosphere. I was no longer the garage-dwelling burden, but an equal participant in the evening, dressed and prepared, as befitted my actual social standing. Mr. Thompson mentioned you worked with Dad's company, Eliana said as the cold wine was poured. Were you involved in the early days? George smiled warmly. From the very beginning. Your father and I started with one truck and more ambition than sense. But David had vision, and your mother had business skill. Quite the partnership. Mom handled the books. Eliana seemed surprised. Eleanor did much more than that, George corrected. She negotiated contracts, managed client relationships, oversaw the financial plans that guided our growth. David built the buildings, but your mother built the business. Logan sipped his wine, his face showing doubt. Interesting. Eleanor never mentioned her executive experience to me. You never asked, I replied simply. The waiter arrived to take our orders, providing a brief break from the tension. Once he left, George guided the conversation towards business matters. Logan, Eleanor tells me you are preparing for an audit at Reynolds Financial. Always a stressful time for any firm. Logan's grip tightened on his wineglass. Just routine. Nothing to be worried about. Of course, George agreed pleasantly. Though in my experience, audits tend to get more complicated when there are discrepancies. Logan's eyes narrowed. What exactly are you suggesting, Mr. Thompson? Not suggesting anything. George assured him, just making conversation. The financial industry is heavily regulated for good reason. Client trust is crucial. Indeed it is, Logan replied coldly. Which is why we maintain the highest ethical standards at Reynolds Financial. I saw Eliana watching this exchange with growing unease. She could sense the hidden tension even if she did not understand what caused it. Speaking of client trust, I added smoothly, I was thinking about our conversation yesterday. Eliana, about the house loan. Logan's attention shifted to me. That is a private family matter, Eleanor. It affects me too. That house was my home for 40 years. I built it with David. I turned to Eliana. Have you asked to see documents about these investments that Logan says will pay out next quarter? The ones that would repay the loan. Eliana turned pale. Mom, this is not the time. It is a reasonable question, George commented. Being careful is essential in any financial deal, especially one involving your main home. Logan put down his glass carefully. With all due respect, Mr. Thompson, our family finances are none of your business. Perhaps not, George admitted. But as David's old friend and Eleanor's current advisor, I feel a certain responsibility. Advisor! Logan repeated, his voice sharp. What exactly are you advising her on? George opened his briefcase and took out a manila folder. Financial matters primarily. Eleanor asked me to review her options given her current living situation. Logan's face darkened. Eleanor has no options. The house is in Eliana's name, and Eleanor has no other significant assets. That is where you are wrong, I said quietly. The moment had arrived. I have options, Logan. Many of them. I nodded to George, who slid the folder across the table. Eliana, curious despite her discomfort, opened it. Inside were statements for accounts she had never seen before, accounts totaling over 4 million. Her eyes widened in shock. Mom, what is this? Where did this money come from? Your father and I were always careful planners, I explained. We never kept all our resources in one place. The house was just one asset among many. Logan snatched the folder, quickly reading the documents with increasing alarm. This is impossible. You never mentioned these accounts. You never asked, I repeated. You assumed I was poor because it fit your story, just as you assumed I was financially ignorant because I am an older woman. Eliana looked between us, confusion turning to understanding. You have had money all this time while living in our garage. I wanted to see what would happen. I admitted how you and Logan would treat me when you thought I had nothing to offer. It was informative. Logan's face had turned an interesting shade of red. This changes nothing. The house is still in Eliana's name. True, I agreed. And it can stay that way. I do not want the house back, Eliana. It was always meant to be yours. Then what do you want? Logan demanded. Respect, I said simply. A proper living space within the house that David built. And for you to stop this plan to use the house as security for your business loans. Logan laughed harshly. You think you can set terms now because you have a few accounts. This does not give you any legal rights to the property. No, but it does give me options, I countered. I could rent a lovely apartment nearby. I could even buy a new house in the neighborhood. But before I do that, I would like to discuss another matter. I gestured to George, who produced a second folder. What is this? Logan asked, sounding tired. Information about certain discrepancies at Reynolds Financial. George explained, specifically irregularities in accounts belonging to Margaret Winters, Edward Patel, and several other clients. The color drained from Logan's face. How did you... We have sources, I said. And tomorrow I have an appointment with Margaret Winters herself. She is eager to review her account statements with a fresh pair of eyes. Eliana looked bewildered. Logan, what is he talking about? What discrepancies? Logan ignored her, his eyes fixed on me. This is false information. You have no proof of any wrongdoing. Not yet, I agreed. But an SEC investigation would certainly uncover the truth. Unless, of course, we can come to an arrangement. You are trying to force me into something, Logan whispered fiercely, leaning across the table. I prefer to call it negotiation, I replied calmly. Here are my terms. You will create a proper living space for me in the house with a private entrance and full independence. You will not use the house as security for any loans. And you will treat Eliana with the respect she deserves as your wife and as David Wilson's daughter. Logan's jaw tightened. And if I refuse, then tomorrow I meet with Margaret Winters the day after with the SEC. I imagine Robert would not be pleased to have regulators going through the firm's records just before an audit. The waiter arrived with our main courses, forcing a temporary pause. Logan sat stiffly in his chair, not touching his food. Eliana looked between us, trying to understand what was happening. "Mom, are you saying Logan's firm is doing something illegal?" she finally asked. Before I could answer, Logan cut in. "Your mother is making baseless accusations because she is bitter about her living situation. There are no discrepancies at Reynolds Financial." "Then you have nothing to worry about," George said cheerfully, cutting into his steak. The SEC investigation should clear everything up. Eliana put down her fork. "Logan, just tell me the truth. Is there something wrong with the company?" The moment stretched as Logan calculated his options. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and tense. "There have been some irregularities in our reporting. Nothing illegal, just aggressive accounting practices. My father's methods are sometimes unconventional." "Unconventional," George repeated. "Is that what you call using new client funds to pay returns to existing clients when the actual investments have failed?" Eliana gasped. "That is a Ponzi scheme." Logan glared at George. "It is not that simple. We have had some investment losses, yes, but we are working to recover. The loan would give us time to straighten everything out without anyone getting hurt." "Accept us," Eliana said quietly. "If the investments do not recover, we would lose our home." "It will not come to that," Logan insisted. "I have a plan." "I am sure you do," I said. "But it will not involve Eliana's house, not anymore." Logan's expression hardened as he realized he was trapped. "Fine. You can have your living space in the house. We will convert the East Wing separate entrance, private bathroom, everything you want. But the SEC stays out of this. And the house remains untouched by business loans," I added, not open for discussion. After a tense moment, he nodded curtly. "Agreed." I looked at Eliana, whose world was clearly falling apart around her. My heart ached for her. The disappointment, the betrayal. But the truth, however painful, was necessary. "Eliana," I said gently, "I am sorry you had to find out this way, but you needed to know." Tears came to her eyes. "All this time, the way you treated Mom, the lies about the business, was anything you told me true? Logan." Logan reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "Eliana, everything I did was to protect you, to maintain our lifestyle. By cheating people, by making my mother sleep in a garage while you renovated her house." She stood up quickly. "I need some fresh air." As she walked away, Logan turned to me, his face full of malice. "Are you satisfied now you have ruined everything?" "No, Logan," I replied calmly. "You did that all on your own." I stood to follow Eliana, leaving George to deal with Logan. Outside, I found my daughter standing by the hotel's decorative fountain, arms wrapped around herself against the evening chill. "Jess," I called softly. She turned, tears streaming down her face. "Did you plan this? Set up this whole dinner just to humiliate him? To humiliate me?" "No," I said, approaching cautiously. "I planned it to protect you, to show you the truth before it was too late, before the house was gone, before the SEC came looking." "You could have told me privately, warned me." Would you have believed me? I asked gently. Or would you have dismissed it as the bitter accusations of your garage-dwelling mother? She flinched at that, acknowledging the truth in my words. I never wanted you in the garage. That was Logan's idea. He said it was only for a short time, just until his parents' visit ended. But then there was always someone else staying, always another reason. I know, I assured her. I do not blame you, Eliana. You were manipulated by a master. But I let it happen, she whispered. I watched him treat you like garbage, and I said nothing did nothing. More tears streamed down her cheeks. Dad would be so ashamed of me. I put my arms around her, holding her as she sobbed. Your father would understand. Logan took advantage of your trust, your love. That is not your fault. What happens now? She asked, her voice small against my shoulder. That depends on you, I said. On what you want. Eliana pulled back, wiping her eyes. I do not know what I want anymore. Everything I thought I knew about my life, my marriage, it has all been a lie. Not everything, I corrected. I am still here, and I am not going anywhere. Not again. She managed a watery smile. Even after how I treated you. Even then. That is what family is, Eliana. Not conditional, not based on what you can give, just love through the good and the bad. She nodded, taking a deep breath. I need time to think. About Logan, about the business, about everything. You have time, I assured her. And you have options just like I do. Whatever you decide, I will support you. As we stood there by the fountain, I felt a change in our relationship, a rebalancing. Eliana was not just my daughter now. She was a woman facing difficult truths and choices. And I was not just her mother. I was Eleanor Wilson, strong in my own right, with resources and resilience that had surprised even me. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Logan's agreement tonight came from desperation, not sincerity. The problems at Reynolds Financial would not disappear simply because we had exposed them. But tonight, for the first time in months, I felt hope for myself, for Eliana, and for the future of our family, whatever it might become. The morning after our confrontation at the restaurant began gray and cold. Eliana had not returned home with Logan last night. She had asked to stay in my room at George's hotel. I had left her sleeping there quietly, slipping out early to return to the house and gather some of my belongings. I was not planning to spend another night in that garage, regardless of what Logan might say. I used my key to enter through the back door, moving softly, in case Logan was still home. The kitchen was empty, perfectly clean as always, but something felt wrong. A stillness hung in the air, too complete, too careful. I paused, listening. A soft shuffling sound came from the direction of David's old study, now Logan's home office. I moved towards it, pushing the door open without knocking. Logan sat at the desk, surrounded by piles of papers. A shredder hummed beside him, its basket already overflowing with shredded paper. He looked up startled, then his face hardened. Breaking into the house now, Eleanor. Hardly breaking in when I have a key, I replied, looking at the documents. Destroying evidence is a serious crime when you are under investigation. There is no investigation, he snapped. Yet. I stepped into the room, noticing the open safe behind the bookshelf. David's old gun safe, now apparently used for storing documents. Margaret Winters might disagree. Our meeting is in 3 hours. Logan's hand stopped on the papers. Cancel it. Why would I do that? We had an agreement, but clearly you are not keeping your end of it. I gestured to the shredder. Planning to run Logan, or just covering your tracks? He stood up suddenly, his height, allowing him to stand over me. You have no idea what you are getting involved in. This goes beyond me, beyond Reynolds Financial. Explain it to me then. I challenged, refusing to be intimidated. Logan walked back and forth across the office, running a hand through his usually neat hair. You think this is just about aggressive accounting, a few misleading returns. He laughed bitterly. My father has connections, powerful people who have invested through our firm for decades, people who expect certain returns no matter what the market is doing. My blood ran cold. You are laundering money. I did not say that. But his failure to deny it was telling. What I am saying is that if Reynolds Financial comes under SEC scrutiny, the consequences will not just affect me or my father. There will be repercussions. Are you threatening me? He stopped pacing, facing me directly. I am warning you, for Eliana's sake as much as yours. Some of our clients do not handle losses well, and they definitely do not appreciate government attention. The meaning was clear, and it sent a shiver down my spine. This was not just about financial fraud anymore. Logan was suggesting something much darker was hidden behind Reynolds Financial's respectable appearance. All the more reason to get Eliana away from this mess, I said. Away from you. Logan's expression changed a calculating look, replacing the panic. And if she does not want to leave, Eliana loves me. Eleanor, despite what you might think. Despite what happened last night, we have a life together. A life built on lies, I countered. On manipulation and deceit. On comfort and security, he corrected. I have given her everything she wants. This beautiful home, social status, freedom from financial worry. What are you offering her? A shabby apartment life as the daughter of a whistleblower. I refuse to be provoked. I am offering her the truth. Something you have never given her. Logan returned to the desk, arranging the papers into a neat stack. Truth is relative, Eleanor, and often less comfortable than a well-crafted story. He looked up, his smile cold. Do you really think Eliana will choose you over me? Over the life we have built? The question was closer to the truth than I wanted to admit. Eliana had spent the night upset, confused. But Logan had spent years building his influence over her, isolating her from friends, making her dependent on his approval. One night of revelations might not be enough to break that hold. I think she deserves the chance to make that choice with all the facts, I said finally. Logan nodded as if we were having a normal business discussion. Fair enough, but before you meet with Margaret Winters, consider this. Eliana is still on the ownership papers for this house. She is still my wife. If Reynolds Financial faces legal trouble, our assets could be frozen or seized, including this property. My stomach tightened. He was right. If the SEC investigated Reynolds and found evidence of fraud, Eliana could lose everything, not because of anything she had done, but because she was tied to Logan, legally and financially. You are using her as a shield, I said, disgusted. I am being practical, he replied. We all want what is best for Eliana. She does not deserve to be dragged into a financial scandal or left homeless because of your personal fight against me. This is not a personal fight. It is about justice for the people you have cheated. Logan shrugged. Justice is a luxury, Eleanor. Security is a necessity. Ask yourself what Eliana needs more right now. Before I could respond, my phone vibrated with a text from George. Eliana is awake, upset, asking for you. I needed to get back to the hotel to make sure my daughter was all right, but leaving Logan here, destroying evidence. Think about it, Logan said, reading my indecision. I will be here when you make your decision. I left without another word, bothered by the encounter. Logan was more dangerous than I had realized, not just a financial cheat, but someone with connections to potentially criminal groups. And he was right about one thing. If Reynolds Financial collapsed in a scandal, Eliana would be damaged. I drove back to the hotel, my mind racing. The ideal outcome would be for Eliana to divorce Logan before any SEC investigation became public, legally separating her from his financial wrongdoings. But divorces took time, and Logan did not seem like someone who would make the process easy. When I arrived at the hotel room, Eliana was sitting on the edge of the bed staring at her phone. Dozens of missed calls and texts from Logan were on the screen. "He keeps saying it is all a misunderstanding," she said as I entered. "That his business practices are aggressive but legal. That you are exaggerating because you are bitter about the garage." I sat beside her. "What do you believe?" "I do not know anymore." She put the phone down. "I have never seen the firm's records, never questioned how they get the returns they promise clients. Logan always said it was too complicated for me to understand." "A convenient way to avoid examination," I observed. Eliana nodded slowly. "Last night after you went to bed, I called his assistant Megan. We have become friends over the years. She confirmed some things, said there have been client complaints that never get recorded, that Logan and Robert have a separate filing system for certain investors. The VIP list Olivia mentioned." "Yes." Megan said some of those clients never come to the office, never meet with anyone but Robert or Logan. She has processed wire transfers to offshore accounts for them. Eliana looked up, her eyes troubled. "That is not normal, is it, for a legitimate financial advisor?" "No," I said gently. "It is not." She took a shaky breath. "I think I have been choosing not to see Mom. Not just about the business, but about everything, the way he treated you, the way he controls our life. I just did not want to see it." I put my arm around her shoulders. "We see what we want to see, especially when it comes to people we love. I do not know if I love him anymore," Eliana whispered. "I am not sure I even know who he is." Her phone vibrated again, another text from Logan. This one she opened. "We need to talk. Your mother does not understand what she is doing. People will get hurt." Eliana's hand trembled. "Is he threatening you?" "He is trying to manipulate you," I said, though Logan's warning in the study echoed in my mind, creating fear to regain control. "What should I do?" She looked completely lost, this daughter of mine who had always been so confident, so sure of her path. "What do you want to do?" I countered. "This is your life, Eliana, your marriage." "I want..." She paused, thinking. "I want space to figure things out. Away from Logan, away from that house. I need to see clearly without his influence." I squeezed her hand. "Then that is what we will do. George has offered his cabin in Vermont. It is remote, peaceful. You could stay there while you decide your next steps. What about you? What about the meeting with Margaret Winters?" I hesitated. Logan's warning about powerful clients and consequences weighed on me. If he was telling the truth, pursuing the investigation could put both Eliana and me at risk. But ignoring it meant the fraud would continue. More victims like Margaret would lose their savings, and Logan would face no consequences for his actions. "I will reschedule with Margaret," I decided. "George can drive you to the cabin today. I will finish up a few things here and join you tomorrow." Eliana nodded, relief showing on her face. "Thank you, Mom, for everything. For not giving up on me even when I let him put you in that garage." Her voice broke. "I am so ashamed. We have all made mistakes," I assured her. "What matters is what we do next." After Eliana left with George, I called Margaret Winters and postponed our meeting, citing a family emergency. She was understanding but clearly disappointed. "I have been going through my statements like you suggested," she said. "The numbers do not add up, Mrs. Wilson. Not even close." "I know," I replied. "And we will get to the bottom of it, I promise. I just need a few days to handle some personal matters first." "Of course, my life savings can wait a little longer." The bitter tone in her voice hurt, but I had to prioritize Eliana's safety. Next, I called Michael Gartner, a lawyer David and I had worked with for decades. I explained the situation, the financial fraud, Logan's veiled threats, my concerns for Eliana's well-being, and financial security. "This is serious, Eleanor," Michael said gravely. "If Reynolds Financial is involved in money laundering, as you suspect, the potential criminal risk goes beyond securities fraud. And these powerful clients Logan mentioned, I do not like the sound of that." "Neither do I. What can we do to protect Eliana?" "First, she needs to legally separate herself from Logan and the firm. I can start divorce proceedings immediately if she is willing. Second, we need to document everything. Your conversations with Logan Elianas with his assistant, any evidence of threats or intimidation. Third, despite the risks we should consider going to the authorities. The SEC perhaps, but given what you have described, the FBI might be more appropriate. Financial Crimes Division. They have the resources to handle cases with potential criminal connections." My stomach tightened. The FBI. This had become much more serious than I had initially imagined when I called George to help me out of the garage. "Let me speak with Eliana first," I said. "This should be her decision too." "Of course, but Eleanor, be careful. If Logan suspects you are planning to go to federal authorities, he might become desperate. And desperate people do desperate things." After hanging up, I made one final call to Martha. "I need a favor," I told her. "Could you go to the house and pick up some of my things? I am staying at the hotel for now, and I do not want to run into Logan again." "Of course," Martha agreed. "Is everything all right? You sound worried." "It is complicated. I will explain everything soon, I promise. Just be careful around Logan if he's there. Do not anger him." Martha scoffed. "That arrogant bully does not scare me. I will get your things and be out before he knows what is happening." I gave her a list of essential items, medications, important documents I had kept in the garage, some clothing. She promised to bring everything to the hotel within a couple of hours. While waiting for Martha, I reviewed the notes George and I had put together on Reynolds Financial. The pattern was clear. Client accounts with falsely high returns, unexplained transfers documents that mysteriously disappeared. Logan's admission about powerful people and expected returns only confirmed our suspicions. This was not just poor financial management. It was systematic fraud, possibly with connections to organized crime. Martha arrived at the hotel just after noon, rolling a suitcase of my belongings. "All clear," she reported. Logan was not home. The place was messy, though. Papers everywhere, especially in his office. Looks like someone was searching for something. That worried me. Logan had been carefully destroying documents when I left. Had someone else visited the house after me? "Did you notice anything else unusual?" Martha thought for a moment. "There was a car I did not recognize parked down the street. Black sedan, tinted windows. Might be nothing, but it seemed out of place in your neighborhood." A chill ran down my spine. "Thank you for doing this, Martha. It means a lot." "Where is Eliana?" she asked, looking around the hotel room. "Is she staying here too?" "She has gone somewhere safe for a few days," I said vaguely to clear her head. Martha's expression softened. "Good. That girl needs space away from that man. I never liked him, you know. Too smooth, too practiced." I smiled weakly. You saw what I did not want to see. Mothers are blind when it comes to their children's happiness, Martha said kindly. You wanted to believe Eliana had found someone worthy of her. After Martha left, I unpacked the suitcase, arranging my medications and clothing. At the bottom, I found a sealed envelope with my name written in David's handwriting. I stared at it, confused. This had not been on my list of items for Martha to bring. I opened it carefully. Inside was a letter dated just weeks before David's death, along with a small key. My dearest Eleanor. The letter began. If you're reading this, it means you finally stood up for yourself against whoever convinced you to leave our home. Good for you, my love. I always knew you would, eventually. Tears came to my eyes. Even from beyond the grave, David knew me better than I knew myself. I have left something for you in our special place. The key enclosed will open it. Use it wisely and remember that I am always with you, always proud of the lioness I married. All my love, David. Our special place. I knew immediately what he meant, the hidden compartment David had built into the master bedroom closet, a secret space where we had kept our most important documents and valuable items. If Logan had discovered it during the renovations, whatever David had left would be gone. But if it remained untouched, I needed to get back to the house one more time. I waited until evening watching the house from Martha's car, which I had borrowed. Logan's car was not in the driveway, and the house remained dark as sunset turned into night. At 8:00, I made my move using my key to enter through the back door once again. The house was silent, the kitchen perfectly clean. As always, I moved through the familiar rooms up the stairs to what had once been my bedroom, with David. The renovations Logan had mentioned were clear, the walls now painted a cold gray, our warm cherry furniture, replaced with modern pieces in glass and metal. The walk-in closet, however, appeared physically unchanged. I went directly to the back panel, running my fingers along the edge until I found the hidden latch. It clicked open, revealing the small compartment behind. Relief washed over me. It was untouched. David's hiding spot had remained undiscovered through the renovations. Inside was a fireproof box. I inserted the key from the envelope, turning carefully. The box opened to reveal a USB drive, another key larger like a safe deposit box key, and a sealed envelope labeled, "For Eleanor, urgent." My hands trembled as I opened this second letter. Eleanor, if you are reading this, something has gone terribly wrong. I have been watching Robert Reynolds and his firm for years, ever since they approached Wilson Construction, about a partnership that did not feel right. What I found disturbed me greatly. The enclosed drive contains documents about what I believe to be money laundering operations using Reynolds Financial as a front. I have sent copies to trusted contacts in the FBI, but I wanted you to have this as protection. The safe deposit key opens box number 247 at First National. Inside you will find additional documents enough to protect you and Eliana if Reynolds ever becomes a threat. Be careful, my love. These are dangerous people. Trust George. He knows everything. I love you always, David. I sat back stunned. David had known about Reynolds Financial's criminal activities years ago. He had been investigating them secretly even as his health failed. And he had left me this protection, anticipating a day when I might need it against them. I put the USB drive, the safe deposit key, and both letters in my pocket. Whatever was on that drive and in that safe deposit box could be crucial leverage not just against Logan, but against the entire criminal operation he was part of. As I closed the hidden compartment and prepared to leave, I heard the clear sound of the front door opening downstairs. Footsteps moved through the entrance hall, too heavy to be Eliana's. Logan had returned. I froze, listening. The footsteps paused in the living room, then continued towards the stairs. He was coming up. Quickly, I looked around the room for places to hide or escape routes. The bedroom had a small balcony overlooking the backyard, but jumping from that height could cause serious injury. The bathroom offered limited cover. The closet where I stood had nowhere to hide except... I looked up at the access panel for the attic in the closet ceiling. David had installed a pull-down ladder for storage access years ago. If I could reach it without making noise. The footsteps reached the top of the stairs, moving down the hallway towards the master bedroom. I had seconds, not minutes. I stretched upwards, fingers just touching the pull cord for the attic ladder. Too short. I needed something to stand on. The footsteps stopped outside the bedroom door. The handle turned. In desperation, I pulled a storage ottoman from the corner of the closet, placed it beneath the access panel, and climbed up. My fingers closed around the pull cord just as the bedroom door opened. I pulled the cord, flinching at the soft scraping sound as the ladder came down. The bedroom light came on, casting shadows into the closet. I quickly climbed the ladder into the attic, pulling it closed behind me just as footsteps entered the closet below. Heart pounding, I lay flat on the attic floor, trying to control my breathing. Through the thin panel, I could hear Logan moving around the closet, opening drawers, pushing hangers aside. Was he looking for something specific, or had he somehow sensed I was there? "I know you were here, Eleanor." His voice called surprisingly clear through the floor. "Your perfume lingers. Japanese cherry blossom, isn't it? Eliana wears the same scent, like mother, like daughter." I remained perfectly still, barely breathing. "Did you think I would not notice the missing items from the garage? Or that Martha was not being watched when she came to collect your things?" His voice became harsher. "What did you take from this house, Eleanor? What did David leave behind?" So he knew about David's secret compartment, or at least suspected something. Had he been searching for it during the renovations, unable to find what David had hidden so carefully? "It does not matter." Logan continued talking to the empty room, as if he could feel me nearby. "Whatever evidence you think you have, it will not be enough. And even if it were, you would not risk Eliana's safety by using it. Would you? A mother's love is so predictable." The closet light turned off. Footsteps moved back across the bedroom, then paused. "I will find Eliana. You know the cabin in Vermont is not as secret as you think. George Thompson is not as careful as he should be. And when I find her, we will have a long conversation about family loyalty." My blood froze. How did he know about the cabin? Had he been listening to our phones? Had someone followed George and Eliana? The bedroom door closed and the footsteps went down the stairs. I stayed in the attic counting my heartbeats, waiting to be sure Logan was truly gone. Only when I heard the distant sound of the front door closing and a car engine starting did I dare to breathe normally again. I needed to warn Eliana and George immediately, if Logan knew where they were. I came down the ladder carefully, checking that the bedroom was empty before going downstairs. The house remained silent, but I could not shake the feeling of being watched, of having walked into a trap that was still closing around me. Outside, I looked down the street for the black sedan Martha had mentioned, but saw nothing unusual. I hurried to her car, getting into the driver's seat and locking the doors before reaching for my phone. No signal. I frowned, checking the settings. Full battery, but 0 signal bars. It had been working fine earlier. A soft tap on the passenger window made me jump. A man in a dark suit stood beside the car, smiling politely. He held up what looked like a badge. "Mrs. Wilson," he said, his voice muffled through the glass. "FBI, we need to talk." I stared at him, unable to move. Was he legitimate, or one of the powerful clients Logan had warned about? The badge looked real, but in the darkness it was hard to be certain. "Please open the door, Mrs. Wilson. It concerns your daughter's safety. Eliana. Her name broke my hesitation. I unlocked the passenger door. The man slid into the seat beside me, closing the door and locking it again smoothly. Thank you. I am Agent Harris. We have been monitoring Reynolds Financial for some time. How did you know I would be here? We have had the house under surveillance since your late husband contacted us 3 years ago. David Wilson provided key information about Robert Reynolds' operations, but we needed more to build a case. He looked at me closely. I believe you just recovered something from inside. My hand went automatically to my pocket where the USB drive and keys were. David left it for me. Agent Harris nodded. Your husband was a brave man. He uncovered the connection between Reynolds Financial and a money laundering operation that spread across several states. Unfortunately, his illness progressed before he could provide us with conclusive evidence. And now you think I have that evidence. We hope so. But more importantly, we need to get you to safety. Logan Reynolds made several calls after you left the house this morning. One was to a number we have linked to individuals known for resolving problems permanently. A hitman. Logan had called a hitman. Eliana, I gasped. My daughter is safe, Agent Harris assured me. We stopped Mr. Thompson and Miss Wilson before they reached the cabin. They are in protective custody now. Relief washed over me, followed immediately by dread. Protective custody? How serious is this, Agent Harris? Serious enough that we need to move you immediately. Reynolds knows you have evidence that could destroy his operation and implicate his criminal associates. You are someone they cannot afford to leave free. I thought of Logan's warning in the study, his calculated threats at the restaurant, his strangely confident voice as he promised to find Eliana. I had underestimated him badly, treating him like a common financial fraudster, when he was actually a part of something much darker. What happens now? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. You come with me. We get your statement, secure the evidence, and place you in the witness protection program until we have taken down the entire operation. Witness protection? I repeated. Leave my home, my identity, everything. Agent Harris's expression softened slightly. It will not be forever, Mrs. Wilson. Just until we have made arrests, and the threat is gone. I glanced back at the house, the home David and I had built. The life we had created, the memories in every wall and floor. Logan had not just taken my daughter, my status in the household, my dignity. Now he was taking everything else. No, not taking. I was choosing to sacrifice these things temporarily, to protect Eliana, to honor David's final efforts, to see justice done. This was not defeat. It was a strategic retreat. I need to get something from the hotel first, I said. Documents George and I collected about Reynolds Financial's client accounts. Agent Harris checked his watch. We can send someone to get them. Right now, our priority is getting you to a secure location. As we drove away from the neighborhood, I watched the familiar streets disappear in the side mirror. David had known this might happen. He had prepared for it, left me the tools I needed to protect myself and Eliana when the time came. My brilliant, forward-thinking husband, planning for possibilities even as he faced his own death. You okay, Mrs. Wilson? Agent Harris asked, noticing my silence. Eleanor, I corrected. And yes, I am okay. I have survived worse than Logan Reynolds. Your husband mentioned you were formidable, he said with a slight smile. Said you were the strength behind everything he built. He exaggerated. I replied, though the compliment pleased me. But I am resilient. As we joined the highway heading towards an uncertain future, I thought of Eliana safely in protective custody of George, who had come when I called no questions asked of David, whose love and foresight protected me even now. I was not alone in this fight. I never had been. Logan had underestimated me from the beginning, seeing only an aging widow, a garage-dwelling burden, a woman past her prime, and usefulness. His blindness had been his weakness, and now it would be his downfall. Eleanor Wilson might be entering witness protection tonight, leaving behind the home she had built and the life she had known. But she was taking with her something Logan could never touch or harm her dignity, her strength, and the evidence that would ensure justice was finally served. 18 months can change everything. The woman who looked back at me from the mirror hardly looked like Eleanor Wilson anymore. My silver hair was now reddish-brown, cut in a fashionable bob, instead of my usual longer style. I had lost weight. Stress does that, and gained muscle from the self-defense classes the FBI had suggested. Even my clothes had changed, trading conservative classics for more modern pieces that helped maintain my cover identity, Diana Phillips. That is who I had been since that night Agent Harris had taken me away from Maplewood. Diana Phillips, a retired library administrator from Oregon, now living quietly in a southwestern town, whose name I had never even heard before the relocation. The apartment was pleasant enough: 2 bedrooms, a small balcony looking out over desert plants, a community pool that I never used. But it was not home. It was not the house David and I had built together, the rooms that held decades of memories, the garden where I had taught Eliana to plant sunflower seeds when she was 5. My phone chimed, a secure line used only for talking with my FBI contacts. "The trial begins Monday," Agent Harris said when I answered. "Reynolds Financial's entire operation has been dismantled. Robert Reynolds took a plea deal. He is cooperating fully in exchange for a reduced sentence. And Logan," I asked, the name still tasting bitter after all this time, "still saying he is innocent, claims he was unaware of any illegal activities, that his father kept him in the dark about the money laundering connections." I scoffed. "Of course he does." "It will not work," Harris assured me. "We have testimony from multiple associates, financial records, electronic records, and most damaging, we have the evidence your husband collected combined with your testimony, and Eliana's." Eliana. My heart ached at the mention of her name. For safety reasons, we had been kept separate during the investigation and before the trial, communicating only through strictly monitored channels. I knew she was safe, knew she had divorced Logan months ago, but the mother in me needed to see her face, to hold her and make sure she was truly okay. "When can I see her?" I asked the question I had been asking for 18 months. This time, Harris's answer was different. "Monday. You will both be brought to the courthouse under protection. After you testify, we will reevaluate the threat level. But if all goes as expected, your witness protection restrictions could be lifted within weeks." Weeks. After a 1.5 years of exile, of a life paused and waiting, I could finally reclaim myself. Eleanor Wilson could re-emerge from the shadow of Diana Phillips. "What about the house?" I asked. It was another frequent question of mine, one that usually got vague answers about frozen assets and legal issues. "Released from federal hold last month," Harris replied. "It is yours again, or rather Eliana's, since the deed is still in her name. But given the circumstances, I imagine she would be happy to sign it back to you." Tears came to my eyes. "And George Martha, are they still both well?" "Mr. Thompson has been a valuable consultant throughout our investigation. Ms. Daniels has maintained your garden, apparently. Says she could not bear to see David's rose bushes die." I wiped away a tear filled with gratitude for these faithful friends who had continued in my absence, keeping watch over the pieces of my life I had been forced to leave behind. Thank you, Agent Harris, for everything. Just doing my job, Eleanor. His voice softened slightly. Though I will admit your case has been memorable. Not many witnesses stay so calm during such a long process. I smiled wryly. I had strong motivation. Seeing Logan Reynolds face justice is worth every inconvenience. After hanging up, I walked to the balcony, staring out at the unfamiliar scenery. The desert sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and pink that still seemed strange to me after a lifetime in Connecticut's green landscape. Beautiful, but not mine. Never mine. Monday could not come soon enough. The federal courthouse was impressive, all stone and authority designed to make ordinary citizens feel small in the face of the law. I sat in the back of an unmarked car with 2 agents beside me, watching the reporters gathered on the steps. The Reynolds financial scandal had become national news once the FBI had taken action against Robert and Logan. The extent of their crimes, securities fraud, money laundering, tax evasion, and connections to organized crime figures had captured the public's attention. "Ready, Mrs. Wilson?" Agent Harris asked from the front seat. I smoothed my navy blue dress, chosen carefully for this moment, professional but not severe. As ready as I will ever be. They took me through a side entrance, avoiding the cameras and reporters, through secure hallways and checkpoints, never stopping, always moving with purpose. Finally, we reached a private waiting room where witnesses were kept before giving testimony. And there she was. Mom. Eliana flew across the room, nearly knocking me over with the strength of her hug. I held her tightly, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo, feeling her physical presence after so many months apart. "Let me look at you," I said, stepping back to study her face. She looked older, more mature than the woman I had left behind. There was a seriousness to her expressions now, a calmness that spoke of difficult lessons learned. But her eyes, David's eyes, were clear and direct, without the troubled look they had held during those final days with Logan. "You look different," she said, noticing my changed appearance. "The hair is temporary," I assured her. "Another few weeks and I can go back to being a proud silver fox." She smiled, though tears shimmered in her eyes. "I have missed you so much, Mom. The check-ins with the agents were not enough. I had so much I wanted to say to apologize for." "None of that," I interrupted gently. "We were both manipulated by a master. What matters is that we are here now together, and Logan is finally facing consequences." We sat side by side, hands clasped, as an assistant district attorney briefed us on what to expect during testimony. Eliana would go first, describing Logan's controlling behavior and financial deceptions in their personal life. I would follow, detailing my discoveries about Reynolds Financial's client fraud and the evidence David had uncovered. Remember, the ADA emphasized, stick to what you personally saw or experienced. No guesses or rumors. Logan's defense will try to portray you both as bitter, emotional women seeking revenge for personal problems. "Convenient," I remarked dryly. "When we trusted him, we were naive and easily manipulated. Now that we are testifying against him, we are calculating and vindictive." The ADA smiled grimly. "Welcome to the justice system, Mrs. Wilson. But do not worry, the paper trail does not lie, and we have mountains of it." When they called Eliana to testify, I squeezed her hand one last time. "Just tell the truth. That is all you need to do." I watched from the waiting room's video screen as my daughter took the stand, swore her oath, and faced the courtroom. Logan sat at the defense table, perfectly dressed. As always, his face a careful mask of wronged innocence. The sight of him still made me angry, but I forced myself to remain calm, to focus on Eliana's testimony. She was magnificent, clear calm. specific in what she remembered. She described how Logan had isolated her from friends, controlled their money, and reacted with increasing anger when challenged. She described discovering client complaints that had been hidden, overhearing conversations about special handling for certain investors, witnessing documents being destroyed before audits. When the defense attorney stood for questioning, his approach was exactly as predicted, portraying Eliana as a spoiled young woman who turned against her husband when he insisted on responsible finances. Mrs. Reynolds Wilson. Eliana Wilson, Eliana corrected firmly. I have resumed my maiden name. The attorney barely paused. Ms. Wilson, is it not true that the tensions in your marriage began when your husband expressed concerns about your spending habits? Eliana did not flinch. No, we had no financial tensions. Logan controlled all our accounts and made all spending decisions. My allowance was deposited monthly and monitored carefully. And that monitoring upset you. Being treated like a child upset me, Eliana replied calmly. Discovering my husband was involved in financial fraud upset me. Watching him relegate my mother to a garage while renovating the home she built upset me. The defense attorney changed tactics, trying to suggest Eliana had been involved in any financial irregularities, given her role as Logan's wife. She answered each suggestion skillfully, neither defensive nor aggressive, simply stating facts. By the time Eliana finished testifying, the defense attorney looked frustrated, and Logan's confident appearance had begun to crack. I felt a surge of pride for my daughter, and a renewed determination to be equally effective in my own testimony. When my turn came, I walked into the courtroom with my head held high. Logan's eyes narrowed as he took in my changed appearance, a flash of genuine surprise breaking through his controlled expression. Good. Let him be off balance. I recounted finding myself forced to live in the garage, discovering Logan's affair with his colleague, and uncovering the financial irregularities at Reynolds Financial. I detailed the meeting with Olivia Chen, the concerns about Margaret Winter's account, and finally finding David's hidden evidence about the firm's criminal connections. Mrs. Wilson, the prosecutor, asked, "What did your late husband's documentation reveal about Reynolds Financial?" David had been tracking unusual patterns at the firm for years. I explained. Large cash deposits that were immediately distributed to certain client accounts, returns that consistently outperformed the market, regardless of economic conditions, and most damning connections between several of Reynolds' important clients and known organized crime figures. Objection! Logan's attorney was on his feet. Speculation and hearsay. Your Honor, Mrs. Wilson is simply describing the contents of documents already submitted as evidence, the prosecutor countered. The judge nodded. Overruled. Continue, Mrs. Wilson. I described finding the USB drive and safe deposit key, explained the documents David had put together, and detailed Logan's threats about powerful people who would not appreciate government attention. During questioning by the defense, Logan's attorney tried the same approach he had used with Eliana, suggesting I was motivated by bitterness over my living situation, jealousy of my daughter's marriage, resentment of my reduced status in the household. Isn't it true, Mrs. Wilson, that you were upset about no longer being the lady of the house? He asked, his tone condescending. I was upset about being forced to sleep in an unheated garage while perfectly good bedrooms were empty, I corrected. I was upset about witnessing my son-in-law defraud vulnerable clients. I was upset about discovering the man who married my daughter was connected to organized crime. These seem like reasonable concerns, would you not agree? A ripple of laughter moved through the courtroom, quickly silenced by the judge. Logan's attorney turned red, adjusting his approach. You have admitted to entering Mr. Reynolds' home office without permission and accessing confidential business documents. Isn't that illegal entry and theft?" "It was my home," I said simply. "My name was on the deed when the house was built. The garage where I was forced to live was part of that property. And the documents I accessed were left to me by my late husband, hidden in a compartment he built specifically for our use. Nothing was stolen. It was already mine." By the time I finished testifying, Logan's composed appearance had completely broken down. He leaned towards his attorney, whispering urgently, his gestures becoming increasingly agitated. I allowed myself a small smile as I stepped down from the witness stand. David would have been proud. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Witness after witness confirmed the pattern of fraud and deception at Reynolds Financial. Former employees described the pressure to manipulate client returns, the separate accounting system for important clients, the destruction of documents before audits. Financial experts explained how the firm had operated basically as a fraudulent scheme, using new client funds to pay returns to existing clients while secretly taking millions for personal use. Most damaging were the testimonies from Robert Reynolds' criminal associates, who had testified against the family in exchange for reduced sentences. They described how Reynolds Financial had laundered money from drug dealing, illegal gambling, and organized crime operations across 3 states. Through it all, Logan maintained his innocence, insisting he had been unaware of his father's criminal connections. But the evidence told a different story. Phone records, email communications, offshore accounts in Logan's name, filled with unexplained cash deposits. On the final day of the trial, I sat beside Eliana in the public seating area, our hands clasped tightly as we awaited the verdict. George Thompson sat on my other side, a strong, comforting presence. Martha had come too along with several of the cheated clients, including Margaret Winters. When the jury foreman stood, the courtroom became silent. "On the charge of securities fraud, we find the defendant Logan Reynolds guilty." Eliana's hand tightened around mine. "On the charge of money laundering, we find the defendant guilty." My eyes were fixed on Logan's back, watching his shoulders droop slightly with each guilty verdict. "On the charge of conspiracy to commit wire fraud, we find the defendant guilty." By the time all 15 charges had been read, Logan's carefully put together appearance had completely fallen apart. When he turned to look back at Eliana one last time before being led away, his expression was not that of a polished financial advisor or calculating criminal. It was simply that of a man who had lost everything. "Court is adjourned," the judge announced, bringing down his gavel with a final crack. Outside the courthouse, standing on the same steps where reporters had gathered for weeks, I breathed deeply of the Connecticut air. After 18 months in witness protection, it felt like coming back to life. "What now?" Eliana asked, linking her arm through mine as we walked towards George's waiting car. "Now we go home," I said simply. "Home." The word held such power after so long away. And yet, as we drove through familiar neighborhoods towards the house David had built, I wondered what home would mean now. The physical building remained, but everything else had changed. Eliana, me, our relationship, our understanding of the world and the people in it. The house came into view as we turned the corner. David's colonial with its distinctive roofline and porch, wrapping around the front. Martha had indeed kept up the garden. David's prized roses were blooming along the front walk, a mix of red and pink against the white siding. "I had the garage torn down," Eliana said as we pulled into the driveway. "Started the renovations last month once the property was released from federal hold." Where the detached garage had once stood was now the base for a new structure, an addition to the main house from the look of it, with large windows and a separate entrance. "What is it?" I asked, stepping out of the car. Eliana smiled. "Your new living space, completely separate from the main house but connected by a walkway. Your own kitchen, living room, 2 bedrooms. Independence with closeness. Isn't that what you always wanted?" Tears filled my eyes as I hugged my daughter. "It is perfect," I whispered. "I should have done this 2 years ago." Eliana said, her voice full of emotion. "Instead of letting him..." "No more looking back," I interrupted gently. "We have both learned our lessons. Now we move forward." As we walked towards the house, I felt David's presence around me. In the strong wood beams he had chosen, the careful work he had insisted upon, the home he had built to last for generations. He had known somehow that we would need this foundation to get through the difficulties that came. Inside, Martha had prepared a welcome home dinner. The dining room table, David's treasured cherry wood that had somehow survived Logan's renovations, was set for 4. George opened a bottle of champagne, raising a toast to justice served and new beginnings. Later, as sunset painted the living room in golden hues, I stood at the window watching the changing light play across the lawn, where Eliana had learned to walk, where David and I had hosted summer barbecues, where a family had grown and changed and survived. "I signed the deed back to you this morning," Eliana said, joining me at the window. "The house is yours again." I shook my head. "No, it should be ours. Both our names on the deed. Equal partners. No more imbalance. No more power struggles." Eliana smiled, leaning her head against my shoulder. "Deal." As darkness fell, I thought about the long journey that had brought us to this moment, from the garage, to witness protection, to the courtroom, and finally back home. Logan had thought he could discard me, reduce me to nothing more than an inconvenient old woman to be put away and forgotten. He had underestimated me, underestimated the strength that comes from building a life, a home, a family, with your own hands. Underestimated the resilience that develops through decades of facing life's challenges. Underestimated the power of a mother, determined to protect her child even from dangers the child cannot see. Most of all, he had underestimated what can happen when that mother makes one phone call, like setting in motion events that would ultimately bring down an entire criminal operation. I was Eleanor Wilson, 69 years old, widow of David Wilson, mother of Eliana, builder of homes and lives. I had survived being forced into a garage, separated from my daughter, and stripped of my identity. I had emerged stronger, wiser, and finally victorious. As Martha and George prepared to leave for the evening, Eliana touched my arm. "Stay here tonight. Your suite is not quite finished, but your old bedroom is ready. I would feel better knowing you were here." "Of course," I said, squeezing her hand. "I am not going anywhere. Not anymore." Later, lying in the bedroom where David and I had spent so many years, I felt a sense of completion, of coming full circle. Logan was gone, facing decades in federal prison. The house was ours again, being rebuilt to reflect our new understanding of family and boundaries. Eliana and I were healing our relationship stronger for having been tested. I had given my daughter our family home, and her husband had made me sleep in the garage. But in the end, one phone call had changed everything, restored. Justice reclaimed our legacy and brought me home at last. Up next, you have 2 more excellent stories right on your screen. If this one was impactful, you will not want to miss these. Just click and check them out.